it is becoming more and more popular to reduce the amount of meat in our diet as the health benefits and the environmental benefits become more and more obvious, and also with the cruelty of the animal industry coming into the public eye. However, this trend comes with some very worrying possibilities, as reports say that many people intent on reducing their meat intake are actually going to be directly swapping their meat for fish, therefore massively increasing the demand for seafood. And this spells disaster for the oceans. Hi guys, welcome to Ginger and Sea. I'm Greg Holder, and today we're going to be looking at the 5 reasons why not to have seafood in your diet. So let's dive straight in. Number 1. The fishing industry is responsible for up to 50% of the litter or plastic in our oceans, mainly in the forms of fishing line, ropes, and ghost nets, or nets that are left abandoned by the fishing industry to just float in the ocean. Now, all of these are extremely dangerous for marine animals, as they are literally designed to catch marine life and designed not to break down in the marine environment. These ghost nets entangle thousands of animals from many different species all around the world, leaving them to die a very slow and painful death. And even small pieces of monofilament line and small pieces of plastic left in the ocean by the fishing industry will break down into microplastics, which then endangers species that are much lower down on the food chain, such as zooplankton and small filter feeding fish. 2. The oceans are under a huge threat from overfishing. 1/3 of all the global fish stocks are already overexploited and in decline, and the other 2/3 is almost all maximally fished. Many of the favorite species that we like to eat are declining around the world, but the fishing industry continues to fish these species at an unsustainable rate and oppose many quotas set on limiting the amount of fish allowed to be caught. The total global catch in 1950 was 20 million tons of fish, and this increased up to nearly 100 million tons of fish in just 40 years by the 1990s. Now, since then, it hasn't really increased much above 100 million tons, and this isn't because there's less fishing effort. In fact, the fishing effort is still increasing exponentially, but it's because there is just not enough fish for us to catch any more than those 100 million tons every year. And not only are the fish species that we want to eat under threat, but also hundreds of other species of marine animals are being killed in their hundreds of thousands around the world through bycatch, which means animals that are caught in the nets or on the lines that are not the target species. This includes seals, dolphins, turtles, and seabirds. All of these are killed in their hundreds of thousands unnecessarily by the fishing industry. Now, sharks are also on this list, and they are killed in their millions around the world. This has reduced the populations of many shark species, some by as much as 90% in just the last 50 years. Therefore, these species are just 10% of what they were just 50 years ago. 3. Now, fish farming can sometimes be seen as the solution to this overfishing problem, and fish farming does definitely help reduce the pressure on wild caught fish. However, fish farming has plenty of its own negatives as well. For one, many fish farms require huge areas of vital, important ecosystems such as mangroves to be destroyed so that these fish farms can be built for animals such as prawns. And also, many of the fish species that are farmed are carnivorous, which means they need to be fed wild caught fish to survive, and therefore they're not actually reducing the pressure on wild caught ocean going fish. Along with these problems, farmed fish require a lot of chemicals and antibiotics in order to stop any disease spreading throughout the population. Now, these chemicals can then leach into the local environment, causing devastation in the local ecosystems with high levels of chemicals. And on top of this, the huge amounts of waste that these fish populations produce in the farms also can cause massive algal blooms in the local ecosystem, which again can completely change that ecosystem and cause devastation to local wildlife. If you want to learn more about fish farming and the pros and the cons, then check out my video just up here. 4. Now, this is a topic that isn't often talked about when looking at the fishing industry, and it's animal cruelty. Now, a lot of people think that fish don't feel pain, but in fact that's very much not true. Fish have been proven many times to feel pain very much the same way that mammals and birds do. However, there are none of the animal cruelty laws that exist for terrestrial mammals for fish. So all of the trillions of fish caught every year, yes, trillions, are subject to fear, pain, and slow deaths when they are caught. Now, caught fish can be killed in a number of different ways in the fishing industry. The most popular one is by asphyxiation, so basically suffocating out of the water, either on the deck or in the hold of the boat. Another common way that the fish die in the fishing industry is by being crushed by the weight of thousands of other fish on top of them when they get pulled out of the water in these massive nets. And a way that the larger fish species are killed, such as tuna and swordfish, is through percussive stunning, which is basically being hit on the head with a hard object like a mallet or a hammer until they die. So this would just not be acceptable if this was happening to millions or trillions of wild animals on land. And farms also kill the fish in the same way, but they can also use methods such as electrocution or anoxia, which is removing oxygen from the water, therefore again another type of suffocation. So if you do not agree with animal cruelty, you cannot agree with the way that fish are killed to get them onto your plate. 5. Finally, if none of these other factors have convinced you that fish should not be on your plate, this one might do it. The fishing industry is one of the largest and last remaining human slavery operations in the world. Thousands of people each year from less economically developed countries are either tricked to joining crews on boats with the promise of high pay and being able to support their families, or literally kidnapped and just thrown on the boats. And when that boat is out to sea, there's absolutely nowhere to escape for these victims. These slaves are beaten, sometimes to death, unless they work. And they work 16 to 20 hours every single day, sometimes for months and months on end. They are given very little food, just enough to survive on, and minimal to no healthcare. And because nowadays it is common for fishing vessels to be able to offload their catch onto larger carrier vessels known as reefers, this means that the fishing ships can actually go for months and months on end without having to return to port at all, meaning there is never a chance for these victims to get off the boat and escape. This is a horrendous practice that is happening all around the world today. And due to these huge reefer ships which will collect the catches from a number of different vessels, it is increasingly hard to actually have traceability to the fish that is in the supermarkets and on your plate and in restaurants. Therefore, it is very hard to be 100% sure if the fish that you are eating has actually come from a ship that is involved in the slave trade. So there you go, guys. There are 5 really good reasons why we should at least reduce the seafood, if not completely remove any sort of seafood from our diet at all. I hope you guys learned a lot from this video. If you have any further questions, please drop a comment below. Don't forget to give this video a like if you learned something, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to learn more about sharks and marine conservation. I'll see you guys at the next one. What is up with my speaking today? 5. I can count.